Right, okay. First up, understand that in this spot, when you place a guy there...
Are these blue mages my workers?
Yeah, see, yes, I told you, yep, the blue mages do that. Okay, it's fine. So as I was saying, yep, in this spot, you collect free wood.
What are these things in front of me?
Yes, yeah, as I mentioned before, it's, you have two boards in front of you, and one is your board, and another one is a space for your resources. Can I carry on teaching? Okay, thanks. Right, and... Right, where was I? Oh yes, and when you want to collect money, you simply play this card.
What's a worker? What's this space?
Okay,
Why do I have 3 bits of money? What is this blue thing? What is a brick? What is...
Hi everyone, welcome to another Broken Meeple Top 10 episode. I am glad and excited to start getting these out more, probably more often than I tried before, because, well, as I can see from views in the past, you guys like them. Therefore, I want to get them out because I love doing them as well. Last time I did my top 10 old games, and this was a request from a Patreon supporter. This one is so much a request, more a suggestion by a couple of YouTube commenters. The names I've got down here is kind of a dual suggestion here. I'm going to mispronounce these, but Emmy Huggles and Red Eye Ghost. They both kind of said the same thing, just in reversal. One said games that I like to teach, and the other one basically said in reverse, games I hate to teach. Now, the one about liking to teach, I could try. I mean, if you want me to do that, say in the comments you'd like to hear that, and I'll give it a shot. But my worry is that that one's just simply going to be my top 10 favourite games. I'm not sure how I would distinguish one as being more enjoyable to teach than others. However, the one that I'm doing today, top 10 games I hate to teach, was a bit more interesting. Because I do like teaching games, in general. It's just something I find great fun, it's a great laugh, I like getting people into the hobby, I like teaching heavy games to gamers who want to know them, I like teaching gateway games to someone who's never seen a game in their life. And just seeing the interest and devotion that a veteran gamer will give, and the sheer joy of delight of like, really, games do this? That you get from someone who's new. Now, there are some exceptions, and that's what this list is about. Because these games on the list, I enjoy playing. But there are some that I'd rather not have to teach if I could help it. And there's a myriad of reasons for that. So, you could think that perhaps it's just a fiddly game to teach. Perhaps it's not very intuitive. Perhaps that gets on my wick. Other times you might think, like a tongue-in-cheek way, you could call this list top 10 games I don't want to play with noobs. I know that sounds really insulting. I don't mean the list to be that way. But the idea being that perhaps there's a game that you like so much, but you prefer it when everybody knows what they're doing, so you're on an even playing field, you don't feel like you've got to hold yourself back, or you know that somebody's going to lose the game because they're new to it. There's a few examples of everything here, and of course, my trusty little black book has all I need to know. So, which games do I hate to teach, but still enjoy to play? Number 10 is right behind my head. Literally right behind my head. In fact, I don't think you can see it as long as I stay in this position. But maybe you are keen-eyed and have a good memory and can remember what it is. This is kind of like the third in a trilogy of games by Madigo. First they had Cyclades, then they had Kemet, and then this one is kind of regarded as the third. It's my personal favourite of the three, but I like all three of the games. However, the problem with this one, Innis, which is a really cool sort of area control / drafting game. You draft these cards that enable you to perform actions in a round, and you have guys running around on a map, doing area control, beating each other up in a kind of deterministic combat kind of way. But the real crux of it is understanding how those cards work. And not just the ones that you see all the time, but the ones you get from locations and the ones that you get from a separate pile of unique cards. You need to be able to understand how they all work together in order to really grasp this game. And on top of that, you need to understand the free victory conditions that you can go for, more, villages and having dominance over another clan and so forth. And the problem with this one, when I'm teaching it, is that a lot of people don't quite grasp it in their first game. This is one of those examples where, tongue-in-cheek, is one that I don't like to play with noobs as often, because they just don't really get it on the first game. Maybe 1 or 2 games later they get it and it's like, oh, that's what it does, and it clicks. But then sometimes they play the game, don't quite grasp it, and then they may never get a chance to play it again, or they don't feel like it. It's like, it wasn't really for me, I didn't quite get what was going on, but you gotta try it again. It is a solid game, it is one of my favourites, but I do prefer that even if we're not necessarily on the same playing field, I'd rather that everybody kind of knew what they were doing with this game. That they understood the rules and they knew, oh yeah, there's those free victory conditions, and when they're looking at the cards, because they've seen them before, they're not literally there, boom, 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 taking forever to choose the card to draft around, because that holds the game up. I want people to be able to go, yep, want that card. Okay, and I'll take that back, take those 2. I want people to speed through that drafting phase so we can get into the area control aspect. So, Innis, solid game, takes a few people a while to grasp it, hence I kind of don't want to teach it as often. My number 9 is another example of the one I just had, in that I prefer to play it with people who know what they're doing, mainly because you're kind of going to wipe the floor with anybody who hasn't played this game before, and also because of the slowness issue. I had to actually go into my other room in order to get this game, because for once it's not actually on the shelf behind me, it's on my other shelf in that room, which is where some of my newest games have found their way. But I think you've heard of this one. Pretty sure you have. Oh god, there we go. Oh, that was good. That sounded a bit dangerous.
A shameful display!
Yeah, Rising Sun. I love this game. Such a great one. I don't normally go mad for things by Cool Mini or Not, and Eric Lang for that matter, but this is one of my favourites he's done. And it's been going well every time I play it. However, teaching it is not necessarily difficult rules-wise, but people do tend to sort of go, okay, I'm not sure what I'm doing, but we'll go with it anyway. But with Rising Sun, you really need to understand the way it works in order to grasp the tactics you need to employ and how to score the points. Frequently, I'll teach this game, and they'll understand the rules, but I'm just wiping the floor with them in points because they don't quite grasp, oh yeah, the honour is important for that, and maybe I should be going for this power, and they won't necessarily know how well to work the cards. And that's the biggest issue, because if I'm teaching this game, I've seen some of these cards before. You want to change the sets, but the base ones and the monster ones I've seen, so I know how they work. I haven't tried every combination out there, obviously, and sometimes I try a combination of cards and it doesn't work out for me. But I know what to expect, and I can only tell them so much about what's coming up. So they don't quite score as many points from using the gods and the cards in a great way. And on top of that, I hate how when I'm teaching this game, particularly if we have too many players, more than 4 players, this really should be a 4 max game. But if you've got 5 or 6 especially, when you have people, you lay out all those cards, you're about to start a round, and 3 people have to look at those cards when that train thing comes up and just, let me think, and stare for the foreseeable future. You literally are just watching 3 people stare at those cards, what seems like forever. Like, literally the sun has gone down and risen up again by the time, they've actually finished looking at them. So you find that the game just screeches to a halt, waiting for people to hurry up and choose a card. And they don't seem to listen to the tips I give. The tip I give for every Euro game when I'm teaching it, stop thinking about every strategy, don't try to min-max every point value that you can get, just pick a route, stick with it, see what happens. It's what I do every time I learn a game. Someone teaches me a brand new Euro game, like Altiplano is probably the most recent Euro game I played. I learnt the rules to it. It's like, okay, this is new. I don't know what the best strategy is, but go with it. And so what did I do? Saw what I had at the start. I was pretty good with stone, so I thought, well, that gives me a chance to build lots of huts. And you know what? I felt like going fishing, because fishing's fun. So I focused on those 2 things. I think I won, but we got some rules wrong, but still. But I just enjoyed doing that. I focused on it, I didn't deviate, I didn't care what llamas were, I didn't have any of those, so it's like, screw llamas. And I enjoyed myself and did fine that way, but so many people want to try everything in their first game. It's like, you shouldn't. Just stick to one plan. Don't deviate, and you'll have a good time, and you won't hold the game up for 3 hours. So, yeah, with Rising Sun, again, I will teach this to new players because I want to play it more often. I want to show people that it is genuinely a good game and not just a bunch of miniatures like a lot of their stuff is. But, you know, for that, it's occasionally I'd prefer just to play it with someone who at least knows the rules. My number 8 comes down to a question similar to the Rising Sun one, but this is more a question of balance. Because some games are fragile in that if you have one person that doesn't do what they're supposed to do, it can throw the whole game off kilter. A game I don't like, it's not the one on my list, Mare Nostrum, is the epitome of such a definition, because the countries that you are in there, the Romans, the Greeks, the Carthaginians and all that, you have to be doing exactly what your faction is meant to be doing. Otherwise, another faction will just steamroll the game. It is so fragile, it's unbelievable. Don't like the game anyway, it's too dry for me. Plus, I hate the fact it's so fragile. This one, though, is the thematic version of that, where you really do need all 4, potentially 5 players to know exactly what they are doing. Chaos in the Old World. Yes, the now out of print, hard to get and stupidly expensive on eBay, Chaos in the Old World. This one, the great Warhammer area control game where you're controlling the Elder Gods. I've got Cthulhu on the brain. And, the gods of Warhammer, so Zenith and Slanesh, I'm trying to remember all their names, Khorne and Nurgle. Yes, haven't forgotten. It's been a while since I played this game. But the fact is, all the races have got different winning conditions and different playstyles. And if you throw in the expansion, the Skaven have their own playstyle as well. And they all intermix with each other, but you really need to know what each race is meant to do. Because if you don't realise that you must run away from Khorne at every opportunity, then you just stand there, they wipe the floor with you, and then they get a bunch of, they get closer to their winning condition. But then you have to understand that Nurgle are spreading all over the place, and you've got to keep them at bay. You've got to realise that Zenith will pop all over the board and do stuff, and they want those magic stones, So each of the races has their own gimmick that they've got to follow to do well, but then if the other players don't understand how they do that, it can throw the game off balance. So this is a game I really enjoy, but it is fragile for that reason. You could have 5 players, 1 new player, and I guarantee you, if that new player has not paid attention or is not a quick learner, they're going to upset the balance a little bit in favour of 1, maybe 2 of the other GAD players. So it's, again, one of those things where I think just because the game is very well balanced as it is, you kind of need everyone on that same balanced playing field in order to keep it that way. So again, this is one I'm not a huge fan of teaching. I prefer that we get into it, we just have to refresh our memory of the rules, but other than that, it's like, yeah, I know what you guys are doing, we gotta be a little bit careful. Chaos in Your World, number 8. My number 7 is diverging a little bit away from what the other 3 were like. You will notice that those other 3 games, probably near the bottom of this list, are more about the balance and the fact that you won't be on the same level playing field. This one is more just, it's quite a fiddly one to teach. And again, you do have a slight element of, you will wipe the floor with people who don't know what they're doing. But I find this one quite a tricky one to teach anyway, because there's so much to teach. But it is a great game, there's just a lot to be involved with. For me, Argent the Consortium is a bit of a bugbear to teach to brand new players, especially if you are unfamiliar with not only heavy Euros, but also this kind of level 99 style of games, which is, here you are, here's this really thematic experience, and here's the kitchen sink to go with it. In fact, here's the kitchen sink from your neighbour's house. There's so much you can do. And with this, you've got to teach all the supporters, you've got to teach the voting thing, like getting the marks on the players. You've got to teach all these different rooms that change every game. You've got to teach the mage powers. You've got to teach the items. You've got to teach the spells. How do you get a spell? How do you research a spell? How do you attack other mages? What's the infirmary do? What's the ultimate goal of the game? What are these special badges that you get to do special actions? Oh my word, there is a lot of fiddly stuff to teach in this game, so it just becomes a nightmare to teach to brand new players. You know, if somebody wants to learn this game and I happen to have brought it out, it's almost like I have to get them to pass some trials first, you know, like a Rorschach test. You know, what does this imply? You know, in order to really get them into this. It's just going to be a slog fest if you're not. You know, I do not get anybody who is, if they're not used to heavy Euro games, I don't want them to play this, period. It's just one of those ones that I kind of stamp my foot down because it's for their own benefit. I've had one occasion where somebody brought in a player, they were not used to this kind of game, and they didn't like the experience. We taught them everything they wanted to know, but they just could not get all those rules. It overwhelmed them like crazy. You know, it sounds harsh, but sometimes you have to build people up in baby steps in order to get them to this kind of level. If they're comfortable with jumping, you know, the bridge and essentially getting to the hard stuff now, then fine. But personally, I prefer to guide them step by step so that they're used to this kind of thing. And with Argon, there's just a lot to take in. Love the game. So many options, wonderfully thematic. I love it to bits. I've even just upgraded this with the Kickstarter 2nd edition components. So I've got the better minis, I've got rid of those stupid bases, I've put metal coins in here. You know, this is a solid game and I love it. One of my top 30, I think. It's a great favourite for me. But there's a die-hard group of people I know from the Southampton group that I tend to play this with, and they've all played it before. You know, none of us are saying we're boffins at it. No, we're not saying we're experts, but we've played it before. We know how to play it. We just have to remind ourselves a little bit of a few rules now and again. Other than that, we're good to go. And that's my best way I love to play this. So, Argent and Consortium, my number 7. My number 6, I have to be a little bit careful with getting it out of the box because the box barely holds everything in it. I mean, if anyone's got a better way to store this game, I'd love to know. And this one is one of those games that was crying out for an insert. You know, certainly better than what Fantasy Fright tried to give you. Now, Civilization games can be a bit of a bugbear to teach to new players, but particularly when there's a lot of rules you gotta teach, especially when they've been associated with a similar title or the fact that it's based on something, they kind of have their head ingrained in this area where it's like, oh yeah, I've played this, therefore I'll understand this game. Not quite. There's a few differences here, and not only do you have to teach them this, you kind of have to unteach them what they know about the previous game. Still in my collection though, but God knows when the last time it was I played this game, because it's just, not only that, it's hard for me to remember the rules to it, but, oh, get it out. Do not let everything go all over the place. Sid Meier's Civilization, the board game. This is barely staying on. I have to hold this because there's just too much in this box to keep it with the lid down. If anyone's got any suggestions, let me know. But Sid Meier's Civilization is a fantastic game. It is a great Euro game, great Civilization game, one of my favourite Civilization games. But there's a lot of rules. It's pretty involved. And because the best way to play this game is with both expansions included, you're teaching a lot of stuff right out the gate. And that's quite a lot for most people to get into, especially if they're not used to these Civilization games. But what I was saying before, if you're one of these people who has got ingrained in the Sid Meier's Civilization PC game, and I love, well, semi-love the PC franchise for Civilization, I'm one of these, it's kind of weird, I love the first half of a Civilization game on the PC. You know, where you build up from scratch and then you get to about the late medieval age. And then after that, I kind of get bored. It's like, okay, can we end this now? There's too much micromanagement, but that's just me. Love the first half though. I wish I could just end it though at that age. But with Sid Meier's Civilization, the board game, it takes elements from the PC game, but it has abstracted them to a degree. You know, there are some similarities, but you have to accept that there are going to be differences to bring it to a board game. And people come in with preconceptions, they've got stuff in their head, they think it works like this, it doesn't quite because it's the board game version, not the PC game version. And so it becomes a bit of a mission to teach this one. Not to mention that because there's so many rules in this game, I can't remember them all from time to time. I mean, if I got this out of the box now, I'd have to read the rulebook from scratch to finish because I just can't remember all the stuff to play it. I mean, this is a bit of a risk when in my profession you review board games and have to play a lot of board games. You have to absorb a lot of different rules, and it's hard to remember the rules to some of the ones you haven't played for a while, particularly if they're meaty Euros like this one. So, gonna have fun getting this back on the shelf, but Sid Meier's Civilization, love the game, just prefer not to teach it. I'd rather someone else did if they're going to, but ideally to keep the game length under the 3-hour mark, I'd like to play it with people who already know the rules and let me be the noob. Because I'm a quick learner, you've just got to refresh my memory of the rules, I'll get it quickly and then we'll move on. But brand new players, you're going to be here for a while. It's in my sieve. Number 6, still love the game, don't want to teach it though. My number 5 has some similarities to the previous one in that you have to unteach them one game in order to teach them this one. Although this one there are more similarities between the two. However, again, and there's probably a way with this, heavy Euros are a pain to teach because there's a lot to teach. By the time you finish, you've lost your voice. And in here, it's not the most intuitive game in the world. This is a bone dry Euro game. And with bone dry Euro games, it's hard to represent the theme in the game. It's hard to say that the mechanics flow nicely and make sense because most dry Euro games literally just throw in a bunch of mechanics and see what's what. Some of them work out well and I enjoy some of those games, but trying to teach them, you've got no way to make it flow easy. So it's almost like you have to do it in steps, and even then there's quite a lot to teach, and then the people who are new are probably going to lose. Now, this is technically 2 games. First one, to a lesser extent, is Terra Mystica. Terra Mystica is a bit easier to teach, I think, because there's less in it, but also because the board is a bit clearer, it's easier to see what's sort of going on that board, and you've got, the good reference aids, and again, it's kept to a, there's still a lot in it, but there's not as much as in Gaia Project. Again, I love the game, I did a review recently, I haven't got Terra Mystica anymore, I now have this. But there's more options in this. There's more things that happen with things like the technology trees and that, and the different tiles. You've then got the fact that rather than the map that had very clear, distinct segments and, easy to tell that borders that, I can go from here, I can't go from here, because everything was done sort of in almost semi-hexes mode. Here you've got a bunch of hexes filled with planets all over the shop, and then it's a case of, okay, what's the range of these planets? Okay, they're on hexes, but I don't know, it just feels a little bit harder to see exactly where everything is in relation to everything else when they're scattered planets in space. Makes more sense because, well, you are in space, they're not going to be perfectly linear, but still gets a little bit fiddly in that regard. With this one though, I just prefer to play it with people who at least know what they're doing or have played Terra Mystica and can easily adapt to this one. Judging by the fact though that you do sometimes come with some preconceptions and it's like, alright, can you just forget about Terra Mystica for the moment while I teach you the extras in this? But, this one is a bit better than the previous one for, actually getting them to sync up. But just allow the rules, the fact that you will wipe the floor with any new player, and just the fact that, more stuff to teach, and it's bone dry. I mean, the power tokens in this, about how they float around those little free brain things, not very intuitive. And let's face it, it's basically, you got to admit, it's stapled onto this game like crazy. So it's not like I can get the theme to go, with the game. I can't explain this in a thematic sense. It's like, we're a bunch of races, here's a bunch of planets, we're here to get victory points. Bone dry Euros, they're harder to teach than a thematic Euro game for me. So, number 5, prefer to just play this with people who I know own the game and already enjoy it. Gaia Project. My number 4 is, like I say, all these games I enjoy. So just because I say I don't like teaching them doesn't mean that A, I'll never teach them, and B, that I don't enjoy them. This is a Euro that I never expected to like, really, because I thought, okay, this is pretty bone dry, it's mechanical, and it's got auctioning in it. Well, bidding, and it's a mechanic I'm not a huge fan of. Oh, excuse me. And I was the sort of thing, every time I try to teach this game, it's hard to remember a lot of the rules. It's not very intuitive, it's pretty dry, and again, dry Euros are harder for me to teach, so I prefer not to. Plus, there's a few people I know who have played this game before, and when I play this with them, we have a blast, because we know what we're doing, and we can get through it reasonably quickly, actually, for how involved the game is. But this one, from Richard Brees, if I can get it there without toppling everything else on there. There he goes. Keyflower. I like Keyflower. I think it's a great game. For some reason the lid won't stay on very well, probably because of rule books. There's a good insert in here though. But intuitive? No. No way. You've got these boat tiles, you're putting meeples around these hexes and putting them on them. And then you've got the symbols to, okay, what does the chariot do? So it allows me to move stuff around the hexes via the roads and then do upgrades. So how does upgrades work? And there's meeples, so when I spent them, they go back in the bag. These come off the boats. Do I get to use that ability now? Oh, it's only in winter. When's winter? There's a lot of fiddliness in this game, and it doesn't help that, I'm sorry, but with this one, and to an even greater extent, Keeper, the one I reviewed earlier in the year, my god, these rulebooks could do with a rewrite. They're not the easiest to follow, and they're all over the place. It's just a wall of text. So, with teaching this game, if I'm not familiar with the rules, I have to learn in advance how to play this game, because I dread the idea of having to look up rules in those rulebooks whilst I'm playing the game, because it's a nightmare to try and find anything. It's just really fiddly to teach for me as a game. But also, balance-wise, you will wipe the floor with anybody who's not played Keyflower before. I mean, we had a pretty bad experience, I think, at StabCon recently, where my friend and I, he was teaching it, but I'm glad I wasn't, but we were teaching it to 3 new players. Now, one person I know sort of gets games quite quickly and was getting into it. Another one was being super cocky, about how, to win the game and that. But then they also demanded to throw in every expansion, despite the fact that the girlfriend with them, had never seen, this sort of game before. You do not teach this with expansions. It is wrong to do that. You should teach the base game and leave everything else out. But it just ended up being a bit of a soured experience for me, for a game that's actually pretty enjoyable. So with that in mind, I have to admit, this is one that I just think, look, a few of us know how to play this. Can we play it? Having to teach new players this can get very fiddly, can get very arduous looking through that book, and I just prefer not to do it. My number 3, I'm not a fan of teaching unless maybe to 1 player. 2 max if they're very good with these sort of games. But also for the fact that this is a game I generally play solo. It's a pretty heavy co-op game. And on top of that, learning it from the rulebooks, whichever one of these 2 games, I mean, they're pretty similar in how they feel, so I've got both of them, and I'm going to include both of them on this number. But my god, who here enjoys teaching Robinson Crusoe, which I'm gonna leave Robinson Crusoe on the shelf. I will pick its brother component though, First Martians. Now, this is, like I say, both of them are pretty similar, hence they're sort of both my number 3. But yeah, whoa, these 2 games have had a history of bad rulebooks. I mean, the one that I got from First Martians, I'm like, how on earth does anybody learn the game from this? The original Robinson Crusoe rulebook, it's all over the shop. It makes no sense whatsoever. Then they've put the 2nd edition out, which is the one on my shelf. In fact, you might even be able to see... Nope, you can't quite see it. That's out of shot. But I've got the 2nd edition, which has an improved rulebook. Improved. It's better, but it's still pretty comprehensive. And you'll forget rules. You've got to look everything up. You don't know where it is to look it up. It's one of those games where it's hard to remember the rules to it. But then on the flip side, I'm not saying I'm an expert on this game. Sometimes I actually prefer to play it where people know the game better than I do. Because I will be able to refresh my memory of the rules quickly, but they know what they're doing, they've played it many times, and they can just simply guide me a little bit. But at least I'll get it back quickly. It's like, oh yeah, we're meant to be doing this, so let me think. So I almost want to be the noob in this game. But there's a lot of fiddliness to teach. It's a lot easier to just get on with it yourself as a solo game. I mean, with this one, the original rulebook is dire. You have to go online to Portal's website and download this almanac, which is a lot better, I'll give them that. It's a lot better to refresh your memory of the rules and actually teach yourself from it. But it's still a print-and-play document that you have to get, because the original rulebook just obviously didn't get play tested or read as much. And so having this extra booklet that you have to read, which isn't 100% clear itself, but it's better than this, it just gets a bit annoying to have to teach it. I'd rather be unfamiliar with the rules and just read the book myself. Hence, I play this one and Robinson Crusoe almost exclusively solo. But I do like teaching the odd person every now and again, but every time I do, it's like, alright, how do I best teach this game? There's a reason why Rodney Smith's Watch It Played logo is on this box. You should watch the video, because you need to watch the video to really understand how to play this game. If only his logo could be on every game, make my life a lot easier. So yeah, First Martians and Robinson Crusoe, anybody who's played these games knows the history with their horrible rulebooks and how very heavy and comprehensive the rules and the game themselves are. Fantastic games though. It is worth the slog to learn these games, and for me it's worth the slog to teach them. I just rather not. I just prefer to learn the rules myself and play it solo, and I have a blast. Number 3, pick your poison, doesn't really matter. First Martians, Robinson Crusoe, both my number 3. Number 2 is a classic example of not only just being a very heavy Euro game, but also, this is a weird one. I said earlier that dry games are a nightmare to teach because you can't make them flow intuitively, they're just mechanics thrown in for the sake of it, and so they're more difficult than others. This is actually a very thematic game, for the most part. There's 1 or 2 abstracted bits in here. But this one's really hard for me to teach because A, I don't care about the theme, like the theme is one I'm just not interested in, but B, because it's so thematic and based on historical events, the only way to get people to kind of understand what is going on in this game without confusing the living daylights out of them is to practically give them a history lesson before you even start teaching the game. You know, let me explain the settings for you. Pens down, you will be examined on this. And then you go on about the history of this game, and then you'll finally get into the mechanics so that it can sort of half make sense. Because otherwise you are teaching this as a bone dry game, and it's a pretty involved game for something that you want to teach in a bone dry condition.
Get on with it.
You know, I got taught it with the theme, but like I say, it didn't really help me much. So this is one of those weird anomalies. Some of you might have guessed already, it's been in your eyesight the entire time. Yes, I like Vital Lacerda's games. They can be a bit of a bugbear to teach. However, this one takes the cake. Lisboa. If I'm the noob in this game, that's fine. If you've all played it before, if we've all played it before, fantastic. We already kind of know what we're doing and we can get on with it. Teaching a bunch of new players though. Oh my word. I'm not interested in the theme of this game. That's not to say it's a bad theme. And it's not to say it's not thematic. It is thematic. But earthquake, tsunami in 1660 or whatever year it was, you know, in Portugal, and you're rebuilding a city. Yay. It's not exactly a theme I gravitated towards. I like the game. It's probably my second least favourite out of his lineup, but I still enjoy the game for the mechanics it has. I like the multi-use card play and the different ways that you can get points. But, you know, when you try to teach it as a bone-dry game, you're essentially just got 3 random dudes there that you're using powers of. You've then got this, not Tetris, but this kind of weird grid of buildings, like the streets were apparently all square and in a grid back in Portugal, I don't know. And then on top of that, because they've gone wonderfully thematic, the whole board is covered in these blue and white sort of pastel colours, you know, to mimic the tiles that they use back there. Great, it's a nice thematic touch. It's a bugbear to look at the table though and see where everything is, because everything blends together like it's literally shoved into a gel and then smothered all over the table. So you're trying to pick out points on the board, particularly at a distance if the lighting's not great, and it's like, oh yeah, that's the clergy thing there, and where does that go? And you're mistaking bits for cards with borders that are just randomly all over the place. I mean, it's not an ugly game, and it's a very divisive topic as to whether people like the look of this or not, but for me, those blue and white tile things just make the board very busy and very difficult to visualize at a distance, you know, for me at least. You know, others have had similar troubles. Some people don't have a problem. It's very much a, you know, are you used to it or not? It's going to be based on the individual. But yeah, I don't like having to give a 20-minute history lesson with this game in order to teach it in a thematic sense. And even then, I can't even remember the full theme of this. Who are the 3 dudes there? I don't know, there's a king, an architect, and a senator or something like that. Do I know their names? No. Do I care what their names are? No. Do I care what year it is? No. You know, basically, I know that you've got 3 dudes that you're doing with special powers, you're building cities on a map, you're clearing cubes. Yeah, cubes are always so easy to teach no matter what they are. And it's Lisboa and you're building it up after a disaster has happened. You know, it doesn't bode well when the theme is not one that gravitates too much to try and teach the game. The game is good. Sounds like I'm slagging it off. No, I enjoy this game. It's on my shelf. That's a big deal. But, yeah. Can somebody else teach the rules? You know, can I just sit back and just enjoy myself? Or can people have read the rules ahead of time and so I don't have to teach it as much? Or perhaps we've already played it before. Sadly, most people I know haven't got this game and haven't played it. So it stops me wanting to bring it out very often. But maybe it will get a resurgence soon, we'll see. I just think maybe it could have been a little bit more streamlined. You know, I've seen worse for heavy Euros, but yeah, it's a bugbear. Lisboa, great game, but my number 2 hated game to teach. My number 1, and if you've been paying attention to me on some Facebook chats, and if you're a friend of mine, you knew what this was coming a long time ago. I enjoy this game. It's low on my top 100, but I love all the games on my top 100, so that's a big deal to be on there. I think this is a solid Uwe Rosenberg game. But at this rate, it's going to end up being a turkey because, you know, I enjoy it, but it's not wonderfully intuitive. The theme in it is a little bit all over the shop in places. I mean, yeah, it makes sense that you're getting the food and getting all this stuff, you know, as Vikings. But, okay, why does this have to be like this? And why are we building it in a Tetris style? You've already guessed it. Yeah. Feast of Odin. I enjoy this game. But somebody else please teach it. Please, don't make me teach it. Teach me the rules. Let me be the noob in this game, you know, because as soon as I've played this game, gone are the rules to this game. Because you've got umpteen amount of phases to teach, you've got all the cards, you've got the fact you're building these Tetris style things, how the income works, you've got feeding your people, why does vertical bread feed you less than horizontal bread, you know, what is up with that mechanic? And then on top of that, the worker placement aspect, I think it was like, what, 60 plus spaces? I mean, worker placement is fine, you know, you might have to teach 10 different spots maybe 15 in a big game, but 60? How many? Seriously? And people, I mean, what is it I'm not getting with teaching this game? What, is there some trick to this? I don't know, because there are some people out there that go, oh yeah, it's easy to teach, yeah, you know, the person who's never played a game before gets this. What, 60 action spaces? I don't care if half of them are grouped in different colours, you know, to say, oh yeah, these are the ones where you get something and this is all to do with hunting. It's still 60 spaces! Just because they're all grouped in a similar category doesn't mean that people constantly aren't asking you, alright, what does that do again? What's that tile? What do I get for this food? How do I breed animals? Yeah, that's another bit. How does this shed work? How do I hunt? How do I get onto a new tile? What does it mean when I gotta, you know, use all these different meeples, you know, more at a time? And why does vertical bread feed me better than horizontal bread? And it's like, I keep saying that because that makes me laugh. It's like, this is a wonderfully thematic game. You are laying things out in Tetris style and the horizontal nature of food is better than the vertical nature. Yeah, okay, this has theme to it, but no, this is not a highly thematic game. Come on. But I do love playing it. It is a great game. I think it is solid. I mean, was it 13 on Board Game Geek or something? Yeah, that's a bit overrated, I will say. But, oh well, so there's a lot of stuff on BGG. But the Feast of Odin game itself is still enjoyable. I do enjoy playing it, but I really just don't want to be, like, teaching the rules. Teach me the rules. Let me be the noob. Let me be the noob so that I can enjoy this game and so that you can refresh my memory of the rules, because let's face it, the second we finish this game, they are gone because I have to play lots of different games and I cannot remember 60 action spaces as well as another 20 rules on top. Hey, and it's not like the rulebook's that great either. I mean, it's not bad, but I have seen better. You know, when you're trying to teach all these different spaces, I'd rather not just have a giant list of them. You know, there needed to be something in there. So, enjoy the game. But this was like such an easy top of the list to make. It's like, top 10 games I hate to teach. Right, Feast of Odin, and then the other 9. Because I hate teaching this one. Such a bugbear to teach. But if someone else is doing it, I will sit back, build my little Tetris thing up, and I will enjoy the game to its heart's content. Even though I still don't know how exactly you're supposed to score a ton of points by moving to other islands, but, you know, I digress. So, you know, solid game, but definitely my number 1 hated game to teach. I'll let someone else do it for me, and it all will be well. So, That's my top 10 games I hate to teach, and there's a few others, you know, honourable mentions that I'll go over quickly. Innovation, I prefer to be on the same playing field, you know, otherwise you just wipe the floor with them. Kanban, the rulebook was not fantastic, you know, the rules are a little bit fiddly, but the theme of it helps me to teach it, hence it was an honourable mention rather than a one on the list. Scythe, again, I like to be on the similar playing field because if you're teaching new players, you will wipe the floor with them in Scythe. However, some friends of mine want me to teach them Scythe, so yeah, I better get used to it, just accept that I'm going to wipe the floor with them, but if they enjoy the game, great. It's just, there's about 6 or 7 of us who have played this game so many times that we can literally play a 6-7 player game in about, you know, less than 90 minutes, and we are just zooming through the turns because we know what we're doing and we're not taking forever with it. So much fun. And that's mainly the reason for that. Anything else? No, that was pretty much it. I crossed off a few like Fields of Arlen and Anachrony and Seasons and stuff like that. Mainly because, yeah, they're harder to teach, but they're wonderfully thematic. And, you know, I feel like I actually enjoy teaching those ones rather than having a problem with them. So, you know, those ones didn't even make honourable mentions. So, yeah. But of course, as I mentioned, I like to ask my Patreon supporters of a certain tier and above to suggest a game for their choice on the top 10 list, and I give a little bit of a spiel about it if I can. Today, my Patreon choice is Carson City. I have to admit, I can see where this one's going, because I've seen playthroughs of this, and it looks pretty involved in what you're doing, and again, this appears to be one of those games that's going to reward multiple plays. You know, when I've seen people play this, it's like, this looks good fun, but there's a lot of stuff you've got to do, and then people aren't too great with the whole meanness aspect of it. So I feel like this is one where, you know, from what I've been told, they prefer to be on a similar playing field. However, sadly, I've not actually played Carson City, so I can't really say much more than that. I would love to try Carson City, you know, let me be the noob, I promise, I'll learn it quickly, but yeah, I can see where they're coming from. Some of these big Euro games with a lot of rules that take more than one game to really grok. It can sometimes get to a point where you want to be on a similar playing field. Therefore, I can see, you know, some games you don't want to teach. So, that's it. My next top 10 list is going to be another one that has been suggested not only by my Patreon supporters, but also on YouTube. It was also one I was considering for a while, so we kind of, all 3 of us got in this triangle of synchronicity, you know, is that a word? And that is my top 10 turkeys. Yep, the Dice Tower have done this one before, so some of you might be familiar with the term, but turkey means games that I used to like, but the time have started to wane on me a bit. So, yeah, this week and next week is not so much negative, but, you know, a slight negative slant on some of these games, but I still enjoy all the games on today's list. The other list, maybe not as much as I used to. Don't worry, there'll be a positive list after that, I'm sure. So, that's it for me for this top 10 list. Maybe I'll get on and record the next one. Yeah, do a double bill for you tonight. So, take care. And remember, whether I'm the noob or you're the noob, tongue in cheek, remember, it's still only a game. So, just sit back and enjoy. Take care, everyone. See you next time.